Hello and welcome to Hightailing Through History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history's vault of the weird and the wonderful. I'm Laurel.
I'm Katie.
Back for episode 83. Welcome into the smoke circle. So happy to have you. Also so high. Katie, how are you doing tonight?
Waiting for that half an edible to kick in is how I'm doing. Heck yeah. Once that happens, you'll be the first to know.
We'll see the transformation happen before our very eyes.
Unfortunately, yes, you will. Other than that, it's just water tonight. I'm on the boring side of things.
Yeah. No, same. Good. Stay hydrated. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to summer. Welcome to
It's
June.
a strawberry edible, if that matters to you, that makes you feel happy to know what it was. Yeah. It was a strawberry. A-H, strawberry. And I was like, all right, cool.
I think probably the marketing was meant to be strawberry, like,
yes,
I'm just chilling.
Because it has
but
CBD
I like that
in it.
I like more of the thought that it's like, it gives you the fear.
I was thinking more like a roller coaster, like, it was a fun
So there's three kinds of ahs we can have, and I like that that's the adventure that one can take. Choose your own adventure with the strawberry.
I chose the roller coaster, so there it is. I was like, yeah!
That's more the adventure you want to have, I feel like. So
I agree.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I have a joint that I rolled.
Pre-roll?
No, girl.
Oh,
that's
roll.
That's a me roll. I was outside having a little smoke before we started.
A toke toke.
A toke toke, a smoky smoke. I'm blowing out. I'm exhaling my smoke into the air, and this dumb cicada goes against the side of the house, and I just Godzilla blasted him with smoke, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I actually started trying to wave it away from him. Dude, your eyes are more red than mine are, bud. I am ready for an adventure through history. How about you? How about y'all?
Generally, always. Oh, dude, listen. My J.R. Tolkien episode could not have been better timed. And why is that, my dear sister? What's happening this weekend, next weekend, and the final weekend of June? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Lord of the Rings extended editions being released in theaters. Oh, girl.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Think for a second I'm going to miss it. You are wrong. You have to understand, I've never seen Lord of the Rings in theaters. Ever. I never got to see the originals. I'm going to live my dreams, dude. I'm so excited. That's what I had to tell you. I just, as I finished it, I was like, oh, I got to text Laurel and tell her that.
Nice.
I forgot.
Yeah.
So.
We'll go back and listen to that, which is good. It's part of a 2-part series of fantasy, classic fantasy authors, I guess, is maybe how you would group that.
Yeah, I just picked the two of them. I picked to do them as a 2-part episode because they influenced each other so heavily and because they were such great friends.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I couldn't do one without the other. So I made sure that when I did it, I did both of them at the same time. So it was really more of a J.R. Tolkien thing, but I was like, I can't forget good old C.S. Lewis over there. So there you go.
Right. No, it was good. It was good. Thank you so much for that. And I actually, correction. I want to make a little correction from my episode last week.
Oh, yeah?
So I did the topic of Hernando Colón, the son of Christopher Columbus, and how he was on this quest to create this perfect library.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really subtle, but it's just one of those things where
it's going to bother you if you don't fix it.
Yeah, because it'll bother me because I know it's going to bother somebody else, and they're going to be like, "She said, oh, I know." I say things sometimes, and I don't notice I say them until I hear it back later, and I go, "Why would I mention that?" Or "Why did I?"
Why did I say that?
I had it not even written down like that. Why would I say it like that? Anyways, things like that. At the end, we were talking about how Hernando is the best, I guess, of the Columbuses, or how. As far as the Columbuses go, he's the least, that kind of thing. And and I said, yeah, Spain and Portugal have so much more to offer the world that we don't really need to hang our hat on Columbus. And I realized later, I was like, why did I say Portugal? I think my brain was thinking of like the Portuguese and Spanish explorers because I
Yeah.
might have been grouping them together, but yeah, it doesn't actually make sense when I say like mention Portugal and then talk about like that being like a Portuguese. It seemed like I was saying it's a Portuguese achievement. I think is what it
I
sounded
got you.
like a Spanish or Portuguese like
well,
joining.
the Portuguese
and I
were
was
the
like,
ones who settled the Caribbean and with the Spanish. So I mean, you're not wrong. They were there at the same time.
So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that just so you guys don't think I'm dumb because I'm
just high, not dumb. We're just fucking high.
And so let's do more of that. Let's do more of this high history. Welcome to our face off here. Bottle, leaf, grinder, shoot. Okay, there you go.
Throughout history, there has been one companion that shaped what human history itself looks like. Though they may not have been known as man's best friend, they were certainly the backbone of man's civilization until the time of the Industrial Revolution.
Do you do some horses?
Fuck yeah, we are, dude. It would come as no surprise that I am, of course, talking about horses, dude. I'm doing famous horses from history is what I'm actually doing. It's not just horses.
Just every single kind of horse through time.
Ever. We're going to be here for fucking days. No, it's just standout stars in history.
Standout stars. Got you. I'm excited. This is great.
It's a fun one.
Okay.
So horses have been essential for daily labor, transportation, war, and entertainment, and even facilitated work within mines to access a new energy such as coal. So just to kind of outline for you that horses are actually like super fucking important, more so than even I realized when I started this topic. So keep in mind that transportation means they sped up the means of migration and trade along with the spread of cultures and languages. You know, one of the first things that I can't remember which tribe, I thought maybe it was the Aztecs or the Mexica that first came into contact with the Spanish, right? Or was it the Inca? I think it was the Aztecs. Listen, I know I should know, but they write about these men on these big, like, dogs or whatever, these horses that they talk about, but like it's one of the like most distinguishing characteristics of them, right? Those, look at Genghis Khan. He was mighty. He also had a cavalry. So horses equate power, right? They're kind of an important thing in life until the Industrial Revolution. They're kind of less important now, but that's okay. They're still important to me. So humans domesticated horses somewhere around 3000 BCE, making them a much later addition, actually, than dogs, which were domesticated 15,000 years ago, and even more recent than sheep, pigs, and cattle, which were domesticated between 8,000 and 11,000 years ago. So horses have only been domesticated about 5,000 years, so they were last almost added to the list. Kind of an interesting thing, I thought, because they've kind of turned out to be extremely useful in a lot of ways. So while any and all kinds of equine lives are important in the history of mankind, today we're going to look at horses that shaped history, whether by heroic deeds or the lasting legacy they left behind long after they were gone. So we're going to start in 1789. A horse by the name of Figure was foaled in New England. This small bay stallion stood a mere 14 hands high. Now let me explain. So bay is a horse that they're brown in the middle with black on their legs and feet and mane and tail and on their ears. So the points, they call them points, are black on the horse. So like the muzzle. If you Google a bay horse and put it up, that's what the color bay is for those of you who do not have visual assistance.
Right.
The bay is the brown with the black points on it.
Got it. Okay.
A stallion is an ungelded male, so it's an uncut male, so he is plenty capable of making babies, and he did. And 14 hands. Horses are measured in hands. The hands are 4 inches. So 4 inches, and they're measured from their shoulder to their foot. So he was 14 hands tall at the wither or shoulder, The reason hands are used is because I can't remember which king of England it was. They measured his hand, and that's how they measured horses at the time. That was just the unit of measurement. That's always stayed. So 14 hands is fucking tiny. For those of you who don't know, most ponies, like little angry small horses that are just closer to hell, so they have more of it in them. Pony's height requirement is 14.2 hands. So he was actually under that. He was like the size of a pony.
Oh.
It's going to be important to say this, every breed has distinct requirements. So if you're a Welsh cob pony, they have to be registered like a dog, like an AKC dog. Each breed registry has certain requirements to be in it, right? So you can have a pony, a Welsh pony or whatever, and it'll be taller than pony, right? It'll technically count as a horse by a height requirement, but each breed has its own distinct characteristics and specifications. And if I don't say that, someone will email angrily. So, for those of you that doesn't matter to, forget I said anything. So, Figure is not a big horse. He's very little-ish. But despite his size, he was strong and fast and moved like a lady's saddle seat horse. So saddle seat horses were the ones that were often gaited. And what that means is they moved extremely smoothly because the ladies would sit side saddle. So to have a strong, sturdy horse that has the power of like a draft horse, which are the big like Clydesdales that would pull a Budweiser wagon, the speed of a thoroughbred, which are racehorses, think Kentucky Derby, and to be as smooth and comfortable as a lady's saddle seat horse is insane. Like, it doesn't exist. You have different breeds for different reasons. Very interesting horse, and you're going to see why he was so important. At 3 years old, he was given to a man named Justin Morgan, who was a teacher and a music composer as well as a horseman. He was traded to him to pay off a debt that was owed to Justin Morgan. Justin Morgan used the stallion for pretty much anything that came up. He rode him to work, used him to pull his wagon, used him for logging. He logged with him. He would go fell trees and use him to haul it away. Racing. He was used in racing, which is really interesting, and he was even a parade mount. So
he can do it all.
He really could. Everything. He was really the cool. I actually have a little Briar horse of him around here somewhere that they did of him. So Figure's ability to outwalk, outtrot, and outpull any other horse was legendary. He even famously beat 2 New York racehorses, we're talking thoroughbreds, in this is 1976, that's not right. I don't know why I did that. It's like it's 1876 when this horse was alive. So it's not 1976. I don't know why I put that, dumbass. It's definitely the 1800s.
I thought you said 17 something.
He was foaled in 1789.
Okay. Did you say 1789 and then something happened to him that was in 1870 something?
No, I think I fucked up the date. God damn it.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know how I did. I looked and I was like, that's not the right date. I was like,
not only could he do everything, but he's fucking immortal. It's 3 different years in there.
What the fuck? 1796. I fucking switched them.
Okay.
So Figure's ability to outwalk, outtrot, and outpull any other horse were legendary. He even famously beat 2 New York racehorses in 1796 in a sweepstakes race and became known as the Justin Morgan horse. He fucking raced thoroughbreds and won. Don't ask me how that came about. The history on this horse is actually really, really interesting. As you see when we get down here, he sired an entire new breed of American horse. He was really amazing. He's definitely one of the horses I enjoyed researching the most about because he was just so utilized. All throughout Connecticut and Vermont, his stud services were offered over his entire lifetime. His most valuable asset proved to be his ability to pass on his distinguishing characteristics to his offspring and even to his grandchildren. You could tell, people looking at a horse could tell, they'd be like, oh, I bet that came from the Justin Morgan horse, which is saying something because, it's really interesting. He continued to be used for breeding as he was traded from owner to owner until being sold to his final owner, Levi Bean. He was sold to Levi Bean in 1819 and was put out to pasture because he's fucking old at this point, so he deserves to be put out to pasture. Sadly, in 1821, he died after being injured by a kick from another horse. Which sucks. I know. He's such a, like, shitty ending. And I was like, man, after all that hard work and everything, both in the stud room and out. So Figure single-handedly sired the entire breed of the American Morgan horse. Single-handedly, single-footedly, single-hoovedly.
Hoovedly. Yes, that's
there you
the
go.
one.
His life story was written about by the author Marguerite Henry. Those of you who've read Misty of Chincoteague will recognize that name. She wrote about him in a book called Justin Morgan Had a Horse, and Disney also produced a movie by the same name. I've never seen it, so I have no idea if it's good or not. I think I owned the book, and I very, very vaguely remember it. I seem to remember it's pretty decently accurate. It does take some creative liberties, though, so just be aware of that. So that's Figure.
Katie, do you think horse historians call themselves horsetorians?
I fucking hope so. And if they don't, they're missing out on possibly a golden opportunity, maybe a platinum opportunity at this point.
I'm going to give that to you guys for free, Horsetorian.
Silver buckle Olympians, but I am going to take us down to Kentucky next. In the year of 1850, Lexington was born, named after the city in Kentucky he was born in. So back in the day, it's important for me to outline this to you. Thoroughbred races were a lot longer than they are now. So, like, take the Kentucky Derby, for example. It's only 1.25 miles.
Okay.
So back in the day, it was a lot longer. They were 4, 3, and 2 miles. Like, they were fucking long. Like, they were like steeplechases, is probably... Because steeplechases are like 2 miles long. They're not short. And in 1855, Lexington himself set a course record at Metaire course in New Orleans. Get ready for this shit. Over 4 miles in 7 minutes and 19 seconds. A feat that showed a recently war-torn country. There was something worth uniting over because the Civil War. He was a Civil War era horse. He was right before it, obviously. But 7 minutes and 19 seconds. Wow. Over 4 miles. And I asked, I think I was Blake I was talking to about this. I said, how? I was like, is that like insanely fast to you? He's like, no, that's impressive. He's like, that's almost 1.5 minutes per mile. And I kind of like thought about it. I was like, that's almost faster than the Derby. Like how they run the Derby now, because the Derby is known as the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. 2 minutes, and they're only going 1.25 miles. This horse was fucking hauling ass. He was almost
trying to visualize it in my head. Yeah.
Isn't that insane? Like, he had to have been going like almost 50 miles an hour. Like, I'm just saying. Yeah. I mean, he has an impressive resume. Let me tell you about it. His greatest fame, as the former's also was actually as a sire to numerous successful horses. No surprises there. It's the lasting legacy you leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
One of his not direct descendants, one of his children, by the name of Preakness, is actually the namesake of the classic race at Pimlico. Prepare thyself. 12 of the 13 horses that have won the Triple Crown are all descended from him. All of them. There's just one that's not, and I'm going to guess it's probably one of the early ones. Lexington, dude. Who knew? Nobody talks about Lexington.
I was going to say I didn't know that one offhand, but that's
I didn't know that one either. That was all news to me, and I'm usually pretty well read on this stuff. For anyone who wants to know a little bit more, there's a book by Kim Wickens. Wickens like wicker basket. Lexington, The Extraordinary Life and Turbulent Times of America's Legendary Racehorse. Include that in there in case anyone wants to look. Lexington died on July 1st in 1875 at Woodburn Farm, Woodford County, Kentucky. And in keeping with his status, he was buried in a coffin in front of the stables housing all of his ladies. So he got buried in front of the mayor's barn instead of the stallion's barn. Because he was a pimp. Oh, sorry.
What a man. Yeah.
Sexy dog.
Damn.
Oh, he was a stud, all right. Currently, you can see his skeleton, articulated as it's just a setup skeleton, can be seen on display at the International Museum of Horse in Lexington, Kentucky. No surprises there. No way. There you go. That's Lexington. Now we're going to not leave the Civil War. We're going to stay there, and we're going to meet a horse by the name of Winchester. Yes, as in the rifles. He was the mount of a General Philip H. Sheridan during most of the Civil War. He was his main mount. He was 3 years old, jet black, with 3 white fetlocks, which are like the ankles on the horse, so his little foot just above his hoof was white. He stood 16 hands high, so respectable, probably racehorse sized, I would say. Originally called Rienzi. He was named after a town in Mississippi that he came from, Rienzi, and his name was changed to Winchester by General Sheridan after he carried Sheridan on his famous ride from Winchester, Virginia to Cedar Creek. Well, Cedar Creek was his most famous engagement. Winchester and Sheridan were actually together for more than 40 others, like incidents, battles, skirmishes, whatever you want to call them. Winchester was even present at the Appomattox Courthouse in April of 1865 for the official surrender of the Confederate Army. He was present and accounted for. Despite being wounded in battle several times, Winchester lived to be almost 20 years old, and after his death in October of 1878, he was preserved and mounted, and he is now on display at the National Museum of American History.
Oh, yeah, the Smithsonian?
Yeah. Next, we have Copenhagen, a thoroughbred out of Arabian stock that was born in 1808. The latter breed, so the Arabian, is probably what gave him his particular stamina and fiery temperament. I like Copenhagen. A 15 hand high, so he's basic quarter horse sized, would be the easiest way to put it to you. Basic ass horses. You could see over the back, but like not racehorse tall. So 15 hand high, ornery stallion named Copenhagen, who gained fame after carrying the Duke of Wellington for 17 consecutive hours in the Battle of Waterloo.
Oh.
Yes.
17 hours. God.
Yeah. When the Duke dismounted Copenhagen after the lengthy battle, he gave Copenhagen a pat of gratitude on the flank. But his grumpy and apparently tireless mount steed nearly took his head off with a sharp kick. This is what one of the French soldiers said. Copenhagen very nearly achieved what the French had failed to do throughout an entire grueling battle. Oh, Copenhagen. So years later, and after a long retirement, Copenhagen died at the age of 28. But his story doesn't end there. He was buried. The Duke noticed, as he's being buried, the Duke noticed one of Copenhagen's hooves had been cut off as a souvenir. This was common back in the day. Hang in there, hang in there. He flew into a rage over it. And it wasn't until sometime later the stolen hoof was recovered. So I went and found out the story for you. A farmer found someone who was selling it on the black market, bought it, and brought it back to the Duke because he knew how important it was to him. So he returned the hoof to the Duke, and the Duke's son eventually turned the hoof into an inkwell, an inkstand, which I guess was super common back in the day. Yeah, it happens.
What?
I was like, ooh. I mean,
no.
Okay, that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, that's morbid, but okay. Glad you had the same reaction. The Duke had this to say about Copenhagen. Said there may have been faster horses, no doubt many handsomer, but for the bottom and endurance, I never saw his equal.
No wonder Copenhagen nearly kicked your head off, you ungrateful asshole. God damn it.
So he was ugly, but he did well. I find that was Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit was ugly as sin, no offense, but like some horses, they were ugly as sin, but they got the job done, dude. Sometimes you're measured in your deeds.
I mean, I've seen some horses that are particularly beautiful, but I don't know what would make a horse ugly.
Ugly if their eyes are off center. I've met
Look
one
like Sloth from Ice Age.
So ironically enough, I'm going to put a horse next that was on the opposite side on that battle at Waterloo. In the battle line of Copenhagen was a horse named Marengo.
There he is. There's
There
Marengo.
he is.
Yeah.
A small gray Arabian who carried none other than Napoleon Bonaparte on his back. While Copenhagen was returned home after battle, Marengo was captured and taken to Britain, where he was put on exhibition. I don't know what that means. So I think you could just come and see. Yeah. You know how you can go see the Budweiser horses at SeaWorld? I think it's kind of like that, where you can kind of go and look at them.
Yeah, plus you've captured the enemy's beloved horse, you know,
Correct.
So they're like...
And he loved that horse.
Oh, yeah, they're like, look at us, we're so great.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. England. Oh, England. I love you.
I can be upset with the country and its history as a whole and still love our family and love visiting, okay? I'm allowed to have both emotions at once.
Mm-hmm.
After he passed away in 1831, at the age of 38, so Marengo's skeleton is preserved, and it stands today at the Imperial War Museum in London.
Cool.
Laurel. You know whose hooves were not made into inkwells? Despite
hopefully any other horse, not anybody else's.
Not hoof. This one's. Comanche's hooves were not. Comanche is often cited as the only survivor of the Battle of Little Bighorn. However, it is important to note that there were actually roughly 100 other horses that lived, but they were captured by the victors. So I think it was like on their side that lived. Comanche, the only one. This bay gelding, a gelding is a fixed male, by the way, was of Mustang stock, of course he was, and was part of the U.S. cavalry. He was the mount of Captain Miles Keogh, Keogh, Keogh. Comanche was seriously wounded in battle, including 7 bullet wounds. He also got an arrow in his ass. One of my sources cited it, and I don't know if I remember to put it in here, so I'm going to tell you now. He got a fucking arrow in his ass and did not throw his rider. He kept right on going. So he had 7 bullet wounds, arrow in the ass, and members of the army found him in a ravine 2 days later after the Battle of Little Bighorn. He was collected and cared for and soon recovered from his wounds, which they are so lucky. After Comanche was retired in 1878, Colonel Samuel D. Sturgis issued an order stating that the horse, quote, being the only living representative of the bloody tragedy of Little Bighorn, June 25th, 1876, his kind treatment and comfort shall be a matter of special pride and solicitude. It's not solitude, it's solicitude. Solicitude. My bad. Sorry, dog. You got me. Shall be a special matter of pride and solicitude on the part of every member of the 7th Cavalry to the end of his life be preserved to the utmost limit. End quote. That order included that Comanche would have a comfortable stable, that he'd never be ridden again, or have to work under any circumstances. Comanche was allowed to wander the parade grounds at his leisure, becoming a favorite pet of the soldiers at Fort Riley, and apparently enjoyed his fair share of beer, which, by the way, is actually good for horses. No, it is. You're supposed to pour beer in their grain because it's a probiotic, because horses are so big. It's like, when we drink a kombucha, it's not enough to actually make you drunk. It's the same for a horse. The alcohol percentage is so low. You can give horses beer. They usually like Guinness. Guinness is a favorite of horses, by the way. But because it's a fermented drink, it's actually good for the probiotics in their tummy. So if you see people giving horses beer, don't freak out. It's totally chill.
Okay,
because I also
horse hooch.
Yeah, horse hooch. Because I freaked
booch.
out.
Horse booch.
Oh, yeah, all the above. I stand by what I said, dude. Horse hooch. So when he died at the age of 29 in 1891, he was given a military funeral with full military honors. One of only 2 horses in the United States to be honored in such a way. His remains are preserved and can be seen on display at the University of Kansas Natural History Museum. Good old Comanche. He's amazing, dude. So while we can't be sure of the origins of this next horse, it is likely he was born in Tunisia. He was gifted to Louis XV as a diplomatic gift. The king was unimpressed by the stallion, however. What a fool he was, among other reasons. And the horse made his way to the Earl of Godolphin, where he earned his name. The Godolphin Arabian is credited as one of the founding sires of the thoroughbred breed as a whole. So there's 3. Wow. The Godolphin Arabian is one of them. The Darley Arabian and the Burley Turk, I think, is the last one. And there are 3 Arabian stallions that all thoroughbreds can trace their lineage back to, because it's a closed book, so you can't breed after a certain amount. So they, you breed your steeplechasers and your riding horses, and you breed to these nice Arabians, and you make a much finer animal, which would be a thoroughbred. And after a certain point, once you establish your breed registry, it's closed. You can't breed to outside of anything from this registry, or it doesn't count anymore. So all thoroughbreds are related to these 3 horses.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to real quick double check the name on that last one. Yeah, so the Darley Arabian, the Godolphin Arabian, Byerly Turk, not Burley Turk. I probably made that up in a high haze. The Byerly Turk, but all thoroughbreds trace back to that lineage.
What did you first call it? A
Burley Turk? A Burley Turk. My bad. Don't put U and Y so close together, man. I probably actually typed that on accident because it happens. I'm going to bring up the same author again. If any child has read Margaret Henry's King of the Wind, knows a little something about the Godolphin Arabian. The novel, though, it's very important to know, the novel is highly fictionalized version of the stallion's life. So a lot of what's in there did not happen. I think some of the big points are close to true, but not all of them. The stallion was a sire of several outstanding racehorses, obviously, while he was still alive, and then died. That's what happens after you die. His genetic impression on thoroughbred horses lives on today. The Godolphin Arabian died in 1753, age 29, and is buried at Wandlebury Hall in Cambridgeshire. His lasting influence on succeeding generations of thoroughbreds can be argued from the fact that 50 years after his death, the first 76 British Classic winners had at least one strain of him in their pedigree. Many modern champions, such as Seabiscuit and Man o' War, are also related to him. There's not a whole lot on him. He didn't get to go do a bunch of races. I know that. So if you've never seen an Arabian, they're the ones with the really pretty dished faces, and they're very small. They're not big horses. They're so small, they're missing their last rib and a vertebrae. They have one less vertebrae and one less rib than any other horse breed in the world. So they're also the oldest.
Yeah, I think they're really cool looking. They're almost like willowy looking.
Yeah, they look like elf horses, right? That's how I describe them too. Willowy is a good word. I fucking agree. They look very bendy, right? They're very wispy. But they're so strong, and they come from the desert, right? So
right, yeah,
their stamina is just insane. I had a whole magazine of Arabians, and there were the ones where they would go over in Egypt and Morocco and places like that. They'll show you what they look like versus a show horse here. So a show Arabian here looks very different to what a desert Arabian over in Africa and the Middle East looks like. Of course, I could not leave out one of the most important horses in history, the mighty Bucephalus, dude. I know, one of the most.
She says Bucephalus,
right? I would never forget. One of the most famous horses of antiquity is the favorite steed of Alexander the Great. For those of you that don't know, although I am surprised if you don't know him. Bucephalus was said to be a huge black stallion, and as legend goes, was untamable until young Alexander came on the scene. The skittish horse would rear anytime anyone came near. Basically, no one could get on his back because he was just spooked out of his mind, essentially, is what was happening. It was the young Alexander that quieted him down and turned him towards the sun, putting his shadow, he was scared of his shadow, and the source of all of his fears behind him. So as long as you're going forward into the sun, you're fine. So as Alexander returned to the arena with Bucephalus and dismounted, his father was said, "O my son, look thee out on a kingdom equal to and worthy of thyself, for Macedonia is too little for thee." Historians claim the taming of this wild Bucephalus was a turning point in the young prince's life, demonstrating the confidence and determination he was to show in his conquest of Asia. Oh, he was a conquesty one, all right. So, Bucephalus became, as no surprise, Alexander's favorite horse, and he rode him into battle. At one point, the steed was stolen. I don't know if you know that story. He was stolen, and Alexander promised, this is Katie as the leader, by the way, in case anyone wondered, promised to lay waste to the land and kill the inhabitants if the horse was not returned, which of course he promptly was, I guess with an apology note. It doesn't hurt.
Sorry we took your horse, bro.
Sorry. We forgot what we were doing for a second and thought it was a different horse, because had we known it was your horse, we never would have done that. Bucephalus died in 326 BCE after the Battle of Hydesipes, I believe. It's going to give it a good college shout. Alexander founded an ancient city of Bucephala in the horse's honor, and its location continues to be debated today. So they don't know where it is, which I'm like, how do you lose a fucking city?
It happens sometimes.
It's like, come on, bro. Like, who just
does.
I was like, who just didn't write it down on the map and was like, oh yeah. A more modern day war horse, though less of an imposing figure as Bucephalus, but no less noble of heart, is Sergeant Reckless. She is perhaps, you know her? Fuck yeah, dog. That just made me so happy. She is perhaps the most decorated horse in U.S. military history. So the young mare, so she's a girl, for anyone who doesn't know horse talk.
Is.
The young mare became part of the U.S. Marine Corps in 1952 when Lieutenant Eric Peterson purchased the mare from a young Korean man. She became a pack horse carrying ammunition for the recoilless, so no recoil, rifles or reckless rifles. These were heavy, 100-pound, 6-foot-long weapons. It's important to tell you that. So she carried these reckless rifles and other supplies to the soldiers during the Korean War. During a 5-day-long battle, on one day alone, she made 51 trips from the ammunition supply point to the firing sites, 95% of the time by herself. She carried 386 rounds of ammunition, which is over 9,000 pounds, which is 5 tons, for those of you who want this to be easy. Over 9,000 pounds, 5 tons of ammunition. Basically, maybe wasn't the most humane thing, but humanity goes out the window when war is happening. So here we are. She carried those 5 tons of ammunition over 35 miles through open rice paddies and up steep mountains with enemy fire coming in at a rate of 500 rounds per minute. So this horse is being shot at a lot.
Yes.
And as she so often did, she would carry wounded soldiers down the mountain to safety, unload them, get reloaded with ammo, and off she would go back up to the guns.
Oh, girl.
I know. As beloved as she was for her bravery, she was also famous for her appetite. The Marine Corps Association and Foundation notes that she, quote, liked to supplement her diet with what the Marines were eating. She once strolled near the galley tent and ate some scrambled eggs that were offered to her. She then washed them down with a coffee. On later occasion, Reckless ate bacon and buttered toast with her scrambled eggs. End quote. So yeah, she was just getting snacks going through the whole campsite. They were very fond of her.
Get those snacks. You know what? You've just carried 5 tons of ammunition
and
got
injured
shot
men.
out and injured men's, like got shot at
and
so
did
many
it
times,
without being told what to do.
And just did it. You get all the extra snacks you could possibly get, girlfriend.
All the scrambled eggs. I don't know how healthy that is for horses, but listen.
I can't imagine it being too good, but
somebody
still.
Get her some molasses. Just let her lick the jar. She deserves it.
She deserves it. Don't let any of these boys tell you like what you should or should not be putting in your body, girl. Like just you
Do what
do
you
live
do
your
you.
life. Live
Exactly.
your life.
Despite her diet and many bullets whizzing around her, the horse survived the war and was recognized for her role. Reckless was brought back to the United States in 1954, where she was cared for by the 5th Marines. She was promoted to Staff Sergeant in 1959, then retired with full military honors in 1960. The mare was the recipient of 2 Purple Hearts, a Good Conduct Medal, and the Presidential Unit Citation with Star, and the National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal. Hold on, it just keeps going. My page cut off. United Nations Service Medal, the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation.
Wow.
So she
That's
got
great.
a lot of fancy medals. Several books have been written about the quirky little horse. I'm so glad you knew who she was, because that was a new story for me, but I was like, oh, she's fucking awesome.
Yeah, because I've done some like animals in history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's one that's come up, and I've had her on the list of maybe doing like a one hitter. So I'll make sure I do something for her for this one.
All right, girl. Are you ready?
All right.
Last but not least.
Okay.
We have Trigger, the Trigger. The Golden Palomino Stallion appeared in all of Roy Rogers' 90 feature films and 101 television shows. According to his owner, he had a great rein and could spin on a dime. So I think he was trained as a reining horse is what it sounds like, which for those of you who don't know, if you've ever seen, what's the Kevin Costner show that everybody likes? Yellowstone?
Yeah.
That I saw one day when our parents were watching it. I saw a clip of a horse doing the quick like movements where they're kind of like doing that. That's cutting. Cutting and then reining. Reining is where they kind of go in a pattern. So they'll kind of run and then they'll do the sliding stop where they pedal their feet and they slide on their back feet and they pedal their front feet and then they back up and they turn around and run back the way that they came. So reining is like when you're training a horse to cut cattle so you can move cattle in and out of a herd and stuff like that. So those horses are very quick, to the point where if you don't have a proper seat, you'll actually just come out of the saddle. They're that fast.
You can ask Mom about her time
on a
reining horse.
I didn't know what I was doing, but he sure did.
My paternal grandfather was a cattleman, and like they had reining horses.
I've been on a couple of them where someone didn't tell me that they left the sliding plates on the back. So when she stopped, we slid and it scared the shit out of me. And I leaned forward and grabbed the horn and squealed because it scared me. And then I started laughing and the horse I was on got so excited. She took off running and bucking and then kept like going in the circles and doing flying lead changes. We were having such a good time. We were such a shit show, but it was so fun.
Yeah, those horses. It's like when you watch like a collie of some, like a collie herding sheep, how they can like, it's the horses that do that. And it's
a herding dog.
It's an experience.
Yeah. So inheriting the best characteristics of his sire was actually a thoroughbred racehorse. Trigger's dad was, and his dam or his mom was a golden palomino. So Trigger had stamina, beauty, intelligence, and a remarkably gentle disposition. I actually was shocked that he was a stallion. I figured he would be a gelding because stallions tend to be aggressively testosterone driven. It's the nicest way to put it.
Yeah.
They actually tend to be kind of dangerous because like if you turn your back on them, sometimes they'll attack you or kick you or come after you. I've handled one stallion in my life. Yeah, I mean, he was a boisterous one. Very quickly, he was handed back to his owner, and I was like, I'm good. This isn't for me.
I've only handled one stallion in my life. I just pulled my neck. Making a bad joke. Shit.
That's what you
Serves me right.
Karma. All right.
Weird. Okay.
All right. So born in 1932, Trigger was originally named Golden Cloud until he was tested out by Rogers as his potential mount for a film. Smiley Burnett, who played Roy's sidekick in his first 2 films, was watching and mentioned how quick on the trigger this horse was. Rogers agreed and decided that Trigger was the perfect name for the horse. Roy purchased the horse for $2,500. So back in the day, though, in the 30s, that's quite a bit. 2,500 in the 30s? How much would that be today? Let's find out.
Get on the calculator. Let's go. Put it in.
$52,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was when I said that, I was like, in the 30s? That's a pretty fucking penny. So Roy purchased a horse for $2,500, which is like $52,000 in today's money. So it was a nice horse, but you would pay that for a nice reigning prospect. That makes sense. Anyway, it was a match made in heaven as horse and cowboy worked wonderfully together. Over a period of almost 20 years, the original Trigger appeared in each of Roy's 81 starring films, so that he starred in. I think it was a total of 90 at Republic, and 100, I think it was actually 101, of Roy's television episodes. This is a remarkable record unmatched by any other motion picture animal.
Wow.
That, and we didn't have laws in the 30s about animals working long hours.
Exactly.
Haha.
Oh, poor Trigger.
I mean, if he had food and stuff on set, he probably did not give a flying fuck. I'm going to be honest with you. Trigger lived to a ripe old age of 33.
Oh.
I know. When he died, he was taxidermied and was on display at the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum in Missouri until 2009. He has since been sold off to a private bidder for like $500,000 or something insane like that. It was like 566. I was like, holy fuck, you really wanted that horse, dude.
It's like
weird, right?
It's weird. Yeah, it's like someone that's got way too much money. It's got like the fuck you money.
Maybe it was
like,
250.
I just really liked
it was a lot.
This show meant everything to me, so I must have it. It's like, I want an Oompa Loompa now, Daddy. That kind of thing.
Daddy, I want a squirrel.
Yeah. That's what that strikes me as. That could probably not be the case at all, and I'm just being a dickhead. But
fucking dickhead.
But that's what that screams to me.
It's very possible.
Now.
If I remember correctly, Roy Rogers said, I just couldn't bear the thought of putting him in the ground and and just all of that going to waste. He goes, the worms would have just eaten him and he wouldn't have been pretty anymore. He's like, I just wanted everybody to still be able to see how pretty he was in life or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's a sweet sentiment, but still.
Yeah, I mean,
just make an inkwell out of his hoof.
God, don't do that. Don't. That's the thing you don't do.
I just wouldn't do any of it.
Your horse. Don't do the hoof. No.
There were so many. I could probably do a part 2, and I probably will in the future. And I'll just leave you with my little closing thoughts. Over many thousands of years and the millions of equines living alongside us, there have been quite a few standouts, be it their speed, strength, and smarts, or their good looks, and loyalty and bravery, and bring us the stories of a few special horses that have withstood the test of time. But there's some horsies from history for you.
Thank you, Katie.
Wild, wild horses. Just kidding. You guys aren't here to listen to me sing, and you wouldn't want to, and sorry, there are no refunds. But we are in between the stories. That was a fun one. Katie, our resident horse girl, resident horsetorian, and she was bringing us some famous horsies in history. What a fun ride. Get it? Oh God, let's move on. Hey, we're so glad that you're here. This is such a good time hanging out with you in the smoke circle. We hope that you're having a great time too. This is the point in the show in which we encourage you to like and follow and subscribe, comment, whatever it might be on the platform in which you're listening or watching us on. We love the interaction. It helps our little show grow and be seen and loved by more people like yourself. So if you could smash the like button, hit follow, hit a few stars, whatever it might be, that would be massively, massively appreciated. And we also encourage you to follow us on Instagram at Hightailing History, or on TikTok at Hightailing History Pod. Over there we have show news and just get to hang out with you guys and interact. And then we also have our little history videos. We call those history one-hitters. Usually something fun that we've learned about in history and just sharing it back with you and having a little fun with it while we do so. And if you're really, really loving what we're doing, like you're like, these gals are my favorite people in the whole wide world, or at least my favorite Midwestern sister history-loving stoner duo, then you might want to consider throwing us a few bucks over on Patreon. Over there, we have our half-baked episodes, which are little mini episodes. We just put a new one up to go along with our last episode regarding Hernando Colon and his quest for the perfect library. We have a new half-baked episode about lost libraries in history. So you can pull out your box of tissues and weep for the Library of Alexandria and just get mad about lost knowledge in history. We also have historic cooking videos and behind the scenes content, interviews, and extra content with our guests. There's all kinds of fun stuff over there. So that is patreon.com/hightailing through history. Our social media and our Patreon are all linked in our show notes below. So you can go down there and give it a little click. And if you decide to follow us, which we would love it if you did, but if you follow us, please say hi. We love it when people say hi or share what episode that they're listening to, and just interact with us. We think it's so much fun to be able to connect with you. Up next, we're doing a little Pride Month celebrations. We get to meet a non-binary preacher in the American colonies back in the late 18th century, known as the Public Universal Friend. And what an interesting story this is, and an incredibly interesting figure in history this is. So without further ado, let's puff puff passive on to part 2.
We are celebrating some Pride history today in the Smoke Circle, and my half of the episode will be taking us back to the American colonies. Specifically, yes, to the Quakers in Rhode Island.
Oh boy.
Now you're like, Laurel, I heard you say both Quakers and Pride in the same sentence, and that doesn't make too much sense.
That's where I was
Are
going.
you sure? Yeah. But I'm sure about this. I am standing by what I'm saying. Come along.
Cook me that bowl of oatmeal. Tell me now.
Yeah. Come along. We have a friend to meet. America is in her revolution era, as the kids say. And in Rhode Island, there is a young prophet dressed in androgynous robes, presenting as gender nonconforming, neither male nor female, and rejecting gendered pronouns, as well as rejecting sin, slavery, and inequality of the sexes.
Hold up. Sorry, you need to stop right now. What year is
ask
it?
Your questions. It is 1752. The preacher also spoke on repenting and salvation with God and traveled the area, amassing quite a following. The preacher was known as the Public Universal Friend, or as I'm going to be calling them tonight, the Friend. Born on November 29th, 1752, they were named Jemima Wilkinson and were assigned female at birth. Not too much is known about them in their earlier years before becoming the Friend, aside from a few things like they were the 8th of 12 children, they were single and living with their parents at the time and attending Quaker services, and they had a very deep knowledge of the Bible. When they were in their 20s, the New Light Baptists came to town, and they brought their own really powerful brand of worship. So like worship, but then just more, just like raise the bar on that worship.
There's Jesus, and then there's Jesus.
Yeah.
Got it.
I don't know what it is, but I just know that it's a very powerful brand of worship and praise.
Indeed.
And they bring that to the town of Cumberland, Rhode Island. And the Friends seeing this, seeing this revival, I guess, if you could say that, coming through is like, that's cool. I dig it. Now, not only is revolution in the air within the 13 colonies, but spiritually, there are changes afoot as well. Now,
you said this was the 1750s?
They were born in 1752. In their 20s, they see the New Light Baptists.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're in the Revolutionary War years here. And during just those years of like the fighting and the war itself, not even like pre and post all that stuff, during those years, there are two very big religious revivals that are happening called the First and Second Great Awakenings, which I actually learned about that in high school.
Oh, I didn't. I was going to say, people had time for spiritual awakenings when they were getting shot at? What the hell?
I mean, not everybody's in the war, right? Women, children, older, like stuff like that. But yeah, I mean,
maybe I don't have a good understanding of where it took place. I guess I kind of think of it like the Civil War, where it took place all over.
You're not, yeah, that wouldn't be wrong. It is very much like that. It is happening within the towns and the fields outside of the towns and stuff. But you're thinking that, yeah, you literally have battlegrounds and war on your doorstep, fighting for independence that you believe very strongly in, or you're hoping that these people rebelling against the crown don't win, and you're still part of the British kingdom. I mean, right? I mean, everyone's still, that's another division, right?
Yeah.
Patriot versus loyalist and stuff like that. And so yeah, you're probably going to be turning to Jesus a whole lot. And so there's a revival of, that's my thought. But yeah, there is the first and second Great Awakenings. And so there's religious movements that are happening even just during the years of the Revolutionary War. And everything changes in 1776. For the Friend, also the country, like a lot of things are going on that year, right? A disease that it was suspected to be typhus rips through their town, and the Friend takes ill. They wake up on the morning of October 10th, 1776, following a night of fevered dreams. The person who their family and friends knew as Jemima is no longer responding to the name. They're no longer identifying as either a man or a woman. The person now calls himself the Public Universal Friend and tells people that Jemima's soul had passed into heaven and their body was essentially reborn and reanimated by a genderless spirit sent by God to go forth and spread his gospel.
How did they take that?
Well, in a variety of ways, Katie. All right, actually. It doesn't go great at first, but as far as their family is concerned, I don't talk about their family so much, but the whole family, right? They were the 8th of 12 children. Their dad's on board. Like, he's like, cool. Mom had passed away when they were young, by the way. So the father raised them all he didn't get remarried again. He just raised all these kids. So God bless Daddy Wilkinson.
I'm surprised he didn't marry just for the house help alone.
Yeah. Dad's on board. Dad's on board, and the siblings are all just, slowly coming on board too. But everyone's cool with it within their family, which is great. So that is exactly what the Friend did. And because you asked, like, how does this go down? Like, let's be clear, it did not go great in their first attempts to speak to various congregations.
Yeah.
Their first outing was at a Quaker meeting. Their Friend tries to stand up and say, I am no longer Jemima Wilkinson. I am the Public Universal Friend. And I am here to say that I have... Hey, Friend, sit your ass down. We don't want to hear it. And they go to stand back up again and say, I am no longer Jemima Wilkinson. I am now here to, spread the zip it. Whatever crazy story you have, don't bring it here.
Just don't.
And person after person in the congregation just basically tried to just shut them up the whole time through that meeting. We don't want to hear it. But the Friend is not deterred. They go outside then of the Quaker community and into Baptist services. And they go in again with that same message of I'm no longer Jemima Wilkinson. This is what's happened to me. And this is my testimony. And I am here on behalf of God. So try to just keep this ball rolling, and so on and so forth through New England, preaching about God's teaching and building their own community of followers. So as they went, they managed to bring people into their fold, right? These followers became called the Universal Friends. And the followers, by the way, are not people on the fringes of society or the fringes of religion.
Okay.
Quite a few of them, or at least there's enough of them. There's a handful of them that are actually quite wealthy and powerful and have some influence.
So it struck a chord with some people then.
In 1783, the followers officially organized into the Society of Universal Friends. Proper noun. Capitalize those words. Society of Universal Friends. That is the religion. Boom. And the Public Universal Friend didn't really have, not necessarily any new and radical messages to bring to the people. Generally, it was a pretty standard, Christ is coming soon, bringing the end of the world. You need to repent and get salvation so your soul lives on. That follow that sort of message. But here's what is radical, at least to the folks of the 18th century. This is radical.
Despite the delivery system.
Right. Well, exactly. The friend wasn't man or woman, but dressed in a way.
Non-binary.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm saying like for them, like this is what was radical for them.
Yeah.
Not presenting with like one gender or the other, but dressed in a way that was traditional clothing for both. For example, they wore a cravat and a robe, which are traditionally seen on ministers and clergymen, really, like a male role. So like, the big flowing preacher robes, and then the cravat is like
the priest collar dog?
No, it's
okay.
think of like a really long piece of fabric, very like kind of Bridgerton-y looking, it goes around a man's neck a couple times and is tied into like a little thing. They also wore the hat that would be seen on Quaker men, or like the Quaker oatmeal guy. And they also didn't wear a bonnet or a head covering that was expected to be worn by women. Instead, they wore their hair in this like fabulous 18th century kind of mullet. It's pretty sweet.
What?
Really short on top, and then like shoulder length curls in the back. So it'd be like, if you just picture like me having, since you can see me right now, Katie, buzz it. Okay, buzz here. And then basically just think these are curls right here.
Wow.
Hot, right?
Whoa.
Yeah. The hair really said God in the front, party in the back. It was a look. But that was confusing to people, right? Because like I said, like the message wasn't radical, but the delivery system, they're like, wait, what do we do with this, right? And the gender nonconformity part of it, that was the curiosity to people, really. And the curiosity, like, and the mystery of a person who's claiming these things, like reborn and reanimated, essentially, that creates some buzz. It pulls some people in. It creates a lot of questions for people, but when people can't have those questions answered so easily or in a way that they understand, that creates anger too. Yeah. And they can't put something in a specific box. So the questions then would be, even during a sermon, would be like, so wait, you're a woman dressed like a man, and then you're preaching because you're not supposed to preach because girls can't preach, but then you're telling us you're not a woman. Like, what's going on?
Right.
And those would be the questions that were coming up for them. And in fact, when their followers would write about them, they referred to the friend with he, him, his pronouns.
Really?
Yeah. Now, the friend rejected any sort of gendered pronouns. So that's why today when we talk about the friend, you'd use they, them, theirs.
Yeah. They seem truly non-binary. Like if they were born today, they would have definitely identified as non-binary.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My thinking with the male, these he, him, his pronouns, my thought is that because they were a minister, that was kind of like how the followers were thinking. Like, well, they're doing like a dude thing, so
you got to use something to refer to them as. So
right, and I thought that was like really interesting. I was like, oh, it probably like it's like
especially since they were doing the preaching, and you said women couldn't do it. It's the only other default option of the day.
Yeah, they're like, so this is what we choose.
Yeah.
So by November 1784, the Friend wrote a pamphlet for their followers called The Universal Friends, Advice to Those of the Same Religious Society. Honestly, the titles for pamphlets and books in the 18th and 19th centuries are just a bloody mouthful. Yeah. But in said pamphlet here, it described the religious teachings and practices of the Universal Friends. And again, it isn't really radical and new. A lot of it's very much in line with a lot of Christian teachings, particularly Quaker practices, which is forsake worldly pleasures and focus your life on spiritual growth and following the word of the Lord. Anti-slavery, which is very much a Quaker belief. If you are Quaker, you are anti-slavery, but if you're anti-slavery, doesn't necessarily mean that you're Quaker. But,
makes sense.
That is like a cornerstone of the Quaker practices.
Interesting. And oatmeal people were not racist, dog.
Yeah, well, I mean, or at least anti-slavery.
That's a good point.
As for the racism part, I guess I can't say one way or another.
They could still be racist as hell. This is true.
Yeah, you could still be racist as hell and be like, I still don't believe in slavery. But you're like, anyway. But there are some things that are radical, particularly for Protestantism and Protestantism of that time.
Yeah.
For one, the friend positions themselves as a path to salvation in sort of a Christ-like way. So that
Oh.
was like, oh, I got a knee-jerk reaction. And not only that, but the friend promotes the doctrine of universal salvation, which was not generally accepted at that time. And that means that while you should repent and should live a life in accordance to God's word, even if you don't, God loves you so much, and in his divine love and mercy, he wouldn't condemn somebody to an eternity of damnation.
Okay.
So
Pretty
everybody
much
gets
what you're kind of
saved
taught
at some point.
today.
It's more generally accepted today, but at that
Yeah.
time, that was not the case.
Yeah.
Like there's like a bit like a purgatory-esque sort
Yeah.
of cleansing of your soul that happens. But you might be able to see like why some religious leaders wouldn't like something like that, you know?
Sure. Takes the power away from the
everybody,
leaders.
yeah, I mean, everybody can get in, right? But the friend is down with it. And along with that, there are some elements of mysticism that influence the friend's teaching. Becoming a universal friend, so becoming one of their followers, meant spiritual empowerment. As in, you too, Katie, could become a more spiritually enlightened, quote unquote. That wasn't the word that was used, but you could have your own sort of spiritual power and connection and become a preacher, or you can engage in prophecy or faith healing. That's more radical for the time.
Very.
And another more radical thing to preach about is celibacy, which the friend was celibate then also. And didn't say like you had to be celibate in order to be a universal friend, but it just gets you closer to God. It's a good thing to do. It's a more holy thing to do, but you don't have to be celibate in order to be a universal friend.
Gotcha. But it was a sought after ideal.
Yeah, but if you could do it, bravo.
Gotcha.
And there are women in the sect that become known as the Faithful Sisterhood, and they are all about celibacy. And that in and of itself is a really empowering choice for women, because being a woman, like womanhood, being a real woman or accepted in society was that you had to be a wife and a mother and like produce.
That was your value in society.
Right. Bring forth life from your body, lady. And they're like, wait, you mean to dummy? I don't have to sexually submit to somebody and like be a baby machine or whatever. Like if I don't want that for myself and it's considered more holy,
fuck
sign
yeah.
me up. Sign me up. Right. So we have a saying in my blended English American household. And that saying is, they're like Marmite. You either love them or you hate them. You know, that's a really bad accent, but that's what it sounds. That's what my ears hear.
It's not that bad, but
yeah. I, for the record, hate Marmite, aka Vegemite. So
whoa, Blake still hasn't tried it. It's sitting upstairs right now. He wants to have a Vegemite party and have people over to try it.
Yeah, I tried Vegemite when my friend came back from Australia from a summer trip. And Vegemite and Marmite are the same thing, unless Australians are screaming at me right now that it's not.
How dare you? No, that is an Australian icon, Laurel.
It's the same thing. It's just a different name. But anyway, you either love them or you hate them. They're like Marmite. And that's the friend. And it's not just the quote unquote looking different that angers people. It's the professing yourself to be like Jesus Christ. People butt heads with them, you know?
Yeah.
And after a while, there becomes a real backlash to the friend and their followers.
Yeah.
Particularly during a time in Philadelphia that has a very high Quaker population. You know, I had said like they kind of had like some hecklers of sorts during their sermons. This really was the time when it was happening. And during a sermon, someone stands up and is like, "What are you?" Yes, what? Yeah. I asked point blank then, "No, are you male or female?" And the friend's like, I'm not doing anything wrong in the way that I'm dressing and how I'm presenting myself. And they're like, "No, we're not having this." And soon a riot takes place outside the friend's home while they're in Philadelphia. Bricks are thrown, windows are broken, and the town even tries to pin a murder on the universal friends, the followers. Kind of like this, the idea being like the the followers are just so
They're
insane. Like
demonizing them.
yeah, exactly. They murdered this woman, which is not true. Just character assassination, really.
Right.
So the friend's like, let's hightail it out of here. Let's go live in peace in the wilderness. Everyone's going to leave us to do what we want to do. We're just going to wait for the second coming out in the woods. So the Society of Universal Friends make their 18th century version of Utopia out in the wilderness of New York. And being isolated is hard. Like, it's real hard for them. It's hard in general, but they have a particularly hard time with it.
Well, because they don't have no trade.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have like infrastructure of some sort. Food's not already growing, so you have to like grow food and wait for it.
Yeah.
Medicine. So people are hungry. People are getting sick. And slowly the society does get on its feet and get a town started, something you can actually call it a town. But unfortunately, it's like once they do get going, that's when things fall apart.
Oh, no.
Yeah. There's a lot of infighting and splintering. Some of those influential, long-time members of the society that I mentioned, like they had a few people that were really influential, followed them for a long time. Some of those members start to pull away and turn their back on the friend, and even go so far as to accuse the friend of blasphemy in the courts, which I think in other states that would have been a bigger deal, perhaps. Yeah. But New York's like, we don't have a law against blasphemy, so let's toss that case out. But these men, these former followers, they find a loophole.
This is a bad loophole.
This is a shit loophole, yeah. So anyway, they find this loophole that in order to have purchased the land that they were living on, their little utopia, which was named Jerusalem, by the way, their own little town that they made, in order to have this land, the friend couldn't sign any deeds because they weren't using what was their legally recognized name.
Correct.
It was a dead name for them. So they're like, oh, I'm not using that name. And so these guys were like, well, we will buy the land for you as your followers. We will sign the papers for you. That's what it was. Great. Excellent. Until it wasn't. And they challenged the friends' property rights, and they won because their names were on the deed.
Right.
In 1819, everything's falling apart. The society's fractured. People are leaving and turning their backs on the friend. The friend has congestive heart failure and then is bedridden. They pass away July 1st, 1819, with only a handful of their most faithful followers by their side. After the death of the public universal friend, the few universal friends, the followers, left. They waited to bury the body because they were waiting to see if they would be like reanimated and reborn a second time, like come back a third time, if you will.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen after a little while. And so thankfully they buried the friend according to their wishes, which was in an unmarked grave on the grounds of their colony. And the society limped along for several more decades until it officially disbanded in the 1860s.
Wow.
So like another 50 plus more years.
That's a long
or just
time.
about about 50.
About 50 years.
Yeah. And that is the story of the friend, aka the public universal friend. Very interesting story of a non-binary person who was a preacher through the American colonies and amassed quite a following for quite some time too. I mean, in terms of like after they died, how the church still kind of had some people that belonged to it, or like the society, I should say, not the church. But
it's interesting. As soon as you told me the name of the group, I expected that to turn into what is today Universalists, and that it's not. It's different.
Not, yeah.
It's not. I was like, oh no, that's not the same thing at all.
It's different. Yeah. There are, I mean, I'm sure there's definitely some aspects in terms of like that universal salvation. That's an aspect of universalism, but that's them. That's the universal friend. But I think it's a interesting mix of maybe what people might think of as a Quaker preacher, especially that time period, and then being like, hey.
Yeah, that blew my mind a little bit. I was like, and what year is it? And you're like, 1752. I was like, no, it's not. That's not a thing, dude. I'm gonna need you. I need you to cite your sources.
I've got them. I've got them in my show notes for y'all to go look. But yeah, I mean, and that's also, I mean, I think it's one of those things when people talk about pronouns these days, and everyone's using pronouns. Well, we've always used pronouns, you know, even if you're like he, him, she, her, you know, like quote unquote, like these pronouns that people are like, this is what I refer to myself as. Like, and then they're like, oh, there are people who weren't like non-binary people didn't exist until like 2020, and you're like, well,
actually,
we got a story for you. Not true.
And it involves oatmeal.
Yeah,
just kidding. It doesn't.
And like Christianity, you know,
right?
like
that blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you, Katie, for bringing famous horses connected to history and these amazing historic events and historical figures to the Smoke Circle today. Appreciate you.
Oh yeah, Sergeant Reckless,
and her snacks. Girl, I hear you. My stomach's starting to growl now.
I was like, snacks sound so fucking good, dude. I'm telling you right now.
Let's get some snacks going. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us in the Smoke Circle today. Such a good time, as always. Thank you, Katie, for bringing the history of the horses. Thanks for being our Smoke Circle Horsetorian today.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Please be sure to like, subscribe, follow, rate, review, those sorts of things, depending on the platform that you're listening on. Yeah, please like, subscribe, rate, review, follow, whatever the things may be on the platform you're listening on. That helps our show grow. And then also make sure that you're following us over on Instagram at Hightailing History or at TikTok at Hightailing History Pod. If you really love us so much, like if we're your favorite people, horsetorians in the whole wide world, just the best horsetorians right here. We have a Patreon, so it's called the Best Buds Club. That's patreon.com/Hightailing Through History, or you can go in the homepage search bar and put in Hightailing Through History. We're two sisters high on history, so I mean you'll find us. But we've got a second patron now, so thank you so much. We got to start talking about it, and I think that just gets the ball rolling. So thank you so much, everybody, for being with us tonight. And we'll be back with you again in a couple weeks. In the meantime, get money, get high, give love, and
hi ho, silver dog.
Away.
Away.
Bye.